Welcome to the Relevance Report, where we explore the relevant stories that are shaping our world today. I'm Victoria Gulinian, your host this week. On today's show, we will be covering Alberta's response to the LA fires and the housing crisis taking place in Jasper. Then, a segment addressing the fast fashion model and its environmental impacts. Next, a closer look into the model's exploitive labor regulations. And finally, find out how you can have a part in alleviating the degradation caused by the unsustainable model right here in Edmonton. Alberta is no stranger to wildfires. So when Los Angeles County went up in flames at the beginning of this year, our province was quick to respond to the calls for help, sending dozens of experienced firefighters to aid with wildfire control. Tori Kershell has more.
The wildfires in LA started on January 7th, 2025, and are still ongoing as of January 27th. The website USA Today says that up to January 26th, the LA fires have burned around 37,500 acres of land and thousands of homes and businesses. NBC Los Angeles tells us that over 15,000 structures have burned so far, and 28 deaths have happened as a devastating result. On January 13th, Alberta sent a trained and experienced crew of 40 Type 1 firefighters to Los Angeles. An individual classified as a Type 1 firefighter is responsible for sustained action fire containment and initial attack fire suppression. They are experienced and trained to be ready for the worst of scenarios. Our firefighters sent to Los Angeles are responsible for aiding people from their homes, helping with suppressing the fires away from burning more homes, and helping the Los Angeles firefighters control the rest of the fire. Currently, we have water bombers, pilots, and contracted night vision helicopters on standby in case more help is needed for the Los Angeles fires. In the summer of 2023, Alberta experienced its own tragic and seemingly unstoppable fires. California sent 115 firefighters to help Alberta's province diminish the raging fires. Now, our province is returning the favor. Alberta is no stranger to the devastating losses that fires can cause. In July 2024, its beloved national park Jasper burned, losing many of the trademark buildings and homes.
In Jasper, hundreds of residents took to the streets to protest the Alberta government's delay on delivering $112 million in promised housing aid. The province claims the holdup is due to disagreements with federal and local officials. Zainab Al-Zubaidi looks closer at the issue.
Around 200 people went out in the cold on January 24th to protest the Alberta government's delay in wildfire aid, marching through town and stopping in front of the local library. Back in July, wildfires devastated much of Jasper, leaving an estimated 2,000 residents displaced and destroying around 30% of its structures. A few months later, in a press conference on October 24th, Alberta's Social Services Minister, Jason Nixon, announced that the provincial government would be committing $112 million to build 250 single-family homes. The houses were expected to be finished for the first residents to move in as early as this January. But in a statement released a few days ago, Nixon said the province will withhold the funding until the municipality of Jasper and Parks Canada agree to build permanent, detached single homes and give more land from the national park to utilize. Unlike the provincial government, Parks Canada and Jasper's local government want higher density temporary housing solutions that can be delivered faster due to the demand. This includes workforce-style mobile units and duplex trailers. The local government says there was already a major housing shortage before the fire that is only worsened afterwards. They also say the existing boundary of 4 hectares, which was set with sustainability in mind, would only allow for 60 permanent single detached units to be made. Jasper Town's boundaries have been set by the Canadian government, meaning an act of parliament would be needed to adjust them. Providing higher density options is the only way to address the urgent housing needs, they say, adding that the low density housing would not allow them to meet the current demand and would limit their ability to meet long-term housing needs. Jasper Town suggests that temporary units, like mobile homes, should be set up while permanent higher density units, such as apartments and townhouses, are being built. Once the permanent units are ready, the temporary ones will be removed to build more permanent units. This issue brings up an important question. Is higher density housing truly a better option to address shortages not just in Jasper, but nationwide? Across the country, it already seems to be considered so. Statistics Canada reports that since 2008, there has been an increasing number of higher density housing types compared to single units, and the gap keeps increasing. As of 2022, around 70,000 single units were built, compared to about 115,700 apartments and 150,200 multiples.
We will now shift to the next segment where we will begin exploring the exploitative effects of fast fashion. Later, we will hear about a social movement which aims to address the desolation imposed by the model. Disposable couture is the current trend in fashion, but what is the true cost of affordable chic style? The unsustainable model of fast fashion manifests into textile waste after exploiting both environmental resources and workers. I looked into the issue, and here's more. Fast fashion is an area of concern to all consumers, meaning everyone in the world. Everyone obliviously contributes within mindless consumerism, creating an immense inundation of waste, compulsively purchasing while wastefully discarding. Consumers believe their antiquated textiles accumulate and eventually dissipate within an unknown void, the disturbing land of waste inconceivable to all who remain infatuated by the rapid flow of fashion. This iniquitous model affects a far greater scope than what is perceived. Consumerism has contaminated the atmosphere through creating a degradative void which remains drowning within chemically manufactured materials, a synthetically induced toxin cultivated by fragments of nylon, polyester, and elastane dispersing within the atmosphere, defiling Earth's surface. Fast fashion allows for the immediate response to consumers' demand, this immediacy made possible through coalescing affordable production with emulative design, rapidly transfiguring the runway into an accessible commodity. This industry has chosen insatiable consumerism as their element of exploitation, feeding off of those who will submerge themselves within the imitation of sophistication, those who desire the chic style but not the unattainable prices. Designers meticulously mimic the elements gathered from the ambiance flooding the runway, the glazed pages of magazines deliberately dissected until understood which opulent elements might a consumer desire. An unending collection of these imitations flood the stores and begin infatuating consumers. The exploitation of resources and environmental degradation seep into the creation of these garments. Once these garments have entered stores, consumers fervently purchase while wastefully disposing of their antiquated items. With the speed at which fashion moves, an item from last month could now be considered obsolescent. This creates an unimaginable inundation of wasted textiles compiling endlessly. Fast fashion is immensely environmentally degradative. From exhausting resources to discarding waste, each element within this model defiles the earth. Degradative landfills exude an overbearing cultivation of chemicals which are soaked into the air. Uncontrollable purchasing tendencies are only sustained by the constant overusage and exploitation of resources. Consumers who believe their antiquated items are effortlessly disposable hold an elusive belief that the unending piles of textile waste are completely used by charities. However, this isn't the truth. Eventually, 85%, 25 billion pounds a year, of these antiquated textiles are forsaken into landfills which leak toxins both into the soil and the environment, as confirmed by CBC News. The decomposing waste releases an accumulation of toxins chemically cultivated by cheap synthetics within degrading textiles, including nylon and polyester. Toxins seep from within these degrading fabrics, greenhouse gases released during this process, ultimately contributing to global warming. The toxins contaminating the atmosphere also create an inundation of atmospheric heat. Exuding from within these non-biodegradable textiles are a number of chemicals and dyes spewing into the rivers and pervading within the soil. Those garments which consumers believe are recycled, through a process in which fibers are broken down and replenished into a new garment, only 1% of those textiles entail in the process, meaning it would take 12 years to recycle what's sold in 48 hours, as stated by Claudia Marseilles. Once these garments have foreseen antiquation, they are sold overseas to low-income countries. These areas are burdened with the irrepressible amalgamation of waste. $22 million worth of antiquated garments, as confirmed by CBC News. Unable to sell even within these regions, eventually all that is left to do is spew the disintegrated textiles across a landfill, allowing for the soil and atmosphere to suffocate in absorption of its chemicals. Desperate to hasten the burden of these textiles, they are eventually set to flames. The incineration process is highly degradative to the atmosphere, emitting an abundance of harmful chemicals and trapped within the atmosphere, toxicating the air. Low-income countries are burdened with the burning of the discarded textiles. However, the amount of waste and burning taking place is enough to affect the entirety of the world. These toxins never break down, rather they continually disperse throughout the world. Fast fashion has afflicted labor for centuries. The model is built upon the overworking and underpaying of workers. Chelsea Affinity will be focusing on the exploitive labor sustaining fast fashion.
Fast fashion is a multi-billion industry that has long faced the issue of exploitative labor. There are some advantages to fast fashion, such as the rapid production and consumption cycles, the constant shifts and changes in trends, and affordable prices. These have made fashion more accessible and dynamic. However, these benefits also come with a wide range of disadvantages. Did you know the reason companies have their subsidiaries in countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh, and India is because of the lack of oversight in the actual textile production. Brands allow their subsidiaries to remain largely unsupervised because it reduces their legal responsibilities towards some unethical and environmental malpractices during textile production. The average worker is subjected to over 12 hours of work per day, with little to no provision of food or water during working hours. As most of these subsidiaries are located in developing countries, the wages paid to the workers are minimal, barely enough to cover daily living expenses. The issue of child labor and employment is also very prominent in fast fashion. The working class involves majority of women and children. The wages of women and children are easy to manipulate in third world countries. Thus, women and children are hired more, with some children living in the workshops with little to no pay. The wages and long working hours aren't the only issues fast fashion workers face. There is also the issue of the working environment. The production is done in what we call sweatshops, where there is little to no concern to the health and condition of the workers. The biggest incident that brought this to the public's attention was the collapse of the Rana Plaza in Bangladesh. The plaza, originally made for commercial purposes, was crammed full of different garment factories. The warnings of the faulty building were ignored by superiors. The death toll for this incident was around 1,100 people. This incident, alongside ecological declination, helped amplify the influence of the fast fashion sustainability. After this incident, some major companies like H&M and Zara have implemented different strategies to improve production and consumption ethics within their brands, and these improvements have influenced the industry. The cost of cheap clothes that we wear and buy from the internet and the habit of humans to overconsume is not paid by our money, but by the workers who are oppressed and forced to work in harsh environments.
Finally, we will be talking about an event that's making impactful change right here in Edmonton, December 2024. Eliana Rain-Johnston is here to break down what went down this past year, the amazing impact we saw, and how we can keep that energy going into the future.
For those who don't know, December is an initiative that has people wear a dress or a tie throughout December to raise awareness and funds for those fighting against underpaid workers, fast fashion, and human trafficking. But it's so much more than just a fashion statement. It's about shining a light on a huge issue that's happening everywhere, including right here in our own city. So how did Edmonton do this year? Honestly, it was incredible. There was so much love and participation from all kinds of people across the city. Businesses, schools, and local organizations really stepped up. If you didn't participate last year, it's not too late to jump in this December. And if you're into volunteering, local organizations are always looking for help. But we all know that 1 month of action every December isn't enough. If anything, it's just the beginning. So what can we do right now to keep pushing for change? The biggest ways to combat human trafficking every day is by supporting fair trade and ethical brands to ensure that workers aren't exploited. In Edmonton, there are some seriously cool businesses doing just that. Take Edmonton Village Goods, a not-for-profit fair trade enterprise in the heart of Wide Ave, showing how the community can take small steps to fight together for a cause. You spend a little more for higher quality products, while supporting ethical brands, making it clear that our choices matter. That's the kind of action we need. Here's the thing. Human trafficking thrives in a system where people are paid unfairly, where rights are ignored, and where workers are treated like commodities. When we support fair trade businesses, we're fighting back against that system. And it's not just about big companies. Every single dollar we spend has the power to either contribute to exploitation or stand up against it. You want to make a difference? Start by thinking about where you're spending your money. But it's not all on businesses. We as individuals need to keep raising awareness, having conversations, and pushing for change. Right now, there are plenty of local ways to get involved. You can donate to ACT Alberta, which is working directly to support survivors in Alberta. An event by A21 later this year where people can take a stand is the Walk for Freedom. It's a peaceful public protest and fundraiser against human trafficking happening October 18th, 2025. The energy is contagious. The bottom line is, the fight against human trafficking is urgent, and it's not going to stop unless we keep showing up, speaking out, and changing the way we live. It's time to move beyond awareness. Let's make real change happen.
Thanks for joining us for the Relevance Report. This week's episode was produced by Eliana Johnston, Zainab El-Zubaidi, Tori Krischel, Chelsea Affinity, and Victoria Gulinian. The show was edited by Zainab El-Zubaidi. The show's supervising producer is Sheena Rossiter. Additional studio supervision by Sasha Stanojevic. This episode was produced as part of the BCSE 206 Introduction to Audio and Video course in the winter 2025 semester. The course is part of the Bachelor of Communications Studies program in the Department of Communication at MacEwan University. The show was edited and produced out of the MacEwan Media Production Studio. Our theme music is called Buzzing by Kaylee Lambert. Additional music includes Groovy Ambient Funk by Mood Mode from Pixabay and Alone by Bo Dleezens, also from Pixabay. Logo design for this podcast is by Sasha Stanojevic, and I'm Victoria Gulinian, your host for this week's episode. This podcast was recorded on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge that the territory is home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 9, 10, and 11, within the historical North Saskatchewan River Territory. Don't forget to subscribe to the Relevance Report on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you heard, please leave us a review and rating. It really helps people find the show. Please join us again next week when we report the relevant stories that are shaping our world.